The soft click of your heels echoed through the marble hallways as you walked toward the CEO's office, holding a neat pile of files against your chest. The morning sun filtered through the glass walls, painting gold streaks across the polished floor. You adjusted your blazer, inhaling quietly before knocking, but before your knuckles could touch the door, a voice stopped you. It was him. Yeah, I'll handle that soon. Jungkook's voice was low, firm, the way it always got when he was deep in business talk. He froze by the half open door, hesitating. I'm serious, Yeji. He continued, his tone softening slightly now. You have made your point. If you're that uncomfortable with her, I'll replace her soon, alright? Your fingers went numb. Replace. Yeji, his girl best friend, you had seen her a few times, always beside him at events, always smiling like she owned the world. The sound of her laugh filtered faintly through the speaker. You felt your chest tighten as Jungkook let out a quiet sigh. I know she's good, he said almost tiredly. She's the best I've got, but fine, if that makes you feel better. Your throat burned, you didn't wait to hear the rest. You turned, stepping back quietly before anyone could notice you standing there. The files trembled in your hands, your pulse beating in your ears. You didn't know how you got back to your desk. The day passed in slow motion. Every call, every meeting, every task felt heavy. By evening, when Jungkook called your name, your voice almost cracked. Can you get me the merger report? He asked, eyes focused on his screen. Yes, sir, you replied quietly. He looked up for a second, maybe surprised at how flat your tone sounded. Usually you would smile or at least meet his gaze, but you didn't. You placed the report on his desk and stepped back immediately. Are you okay? He asked after a moment, his brows slightly furrowed. Yes, sir. You said again, that was all. No warmth, no small talk, nothing. He tilted his head slightly, studying you, then nodded. All right, you can go. You bowed politely and walked out before he could ask more. That night at home, you sat by your window watching the city lights blur in your eyes. You had replayed his words again and again until your chest hurt. If you're uncomfortable with her, I'll replace her soon. It wasn't anger that broke you, it was the quiet disappointment. You had been working under John Jungkook for 4 years now. 4 years of loyalty, discipline, and effort that came from something deeper than duty. You were the first to arrive every morning and the last to leave at night. You never complained. You never made excuses. Every file that landed on your desk was handled with precision. Every meeting you arranged ran perfectly on time. Every client that met you left impressed, not just by your professionalism, but by your calm, kind manner. You had built your name in that company not because you were the CEO's favorite, but because you earned it. Even the senior managers looked up to you. The interns whispered that you were the perfect example of elegance, polite, respectful, yet firm when it came to work. You never raised your voice. And then there was him, John Jungkook, the man who never praised easily, but when he did, it was usually about you. She's the most efficient person I have worked with. She gets things done before I even ask. Others should learn her work ethics. You had smiled quietly each time you heard those words, pretending they didn't mean more to you than they should have. He trusted you with everything, his meetings, his schedule, even his moods. You knew exactly when to hand him coffee without asking, when to leave him alone, and when to gently remind him to take a break. And now, all of that, was it temporary? Replaceable? You laughed bitterly under your breath, your reflection in the glass faintly mocking you. Of course, you whispered, I should have known better. Your fingers brushed the edge of your notebook, the one where you still kept notes of his favorite things, the one you would never need again. You closed it slowly, the ache in your chest heavier than ever. The morning air felt colder than usual. You walked into the office earlier than anyone else, like you always did, but this time the silence felt different, heavier, unfamiliar. The lobby lights glowed softly, and the faint scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. The receptionist smiled at you. Good morning, Miss Wine. You are early again. You gave her a polite smile. Good morning, Hannah. Just wanted to finish a few reports before the day gets busy. As you walked to your desk, your heels clicked softly against the marble floor. Everything looked the same, the organized desks, the framed awards, the glass walled office at the end of the corridor, but to you nothing felt the same anymore. You placed your bag down, turned on your computer, and forced yourself to focus. You weren't going to let emotions ruin your professionalism. You decided you would keep your distance quietly. No coldness, no drama, just boundaries. By 8:55 a.m., the elevator door slid open with a quiet ding. Every head turned. Like always, Chon Jungkook stepped out, dressed in a charcoal suit, his usual air of quiet dominance wrapping around him. His presence filled the room effortlessly. Good morning, Mr. John. The staff greeted in unison. He nodded lightly, eyes scanning the office until they landed on you. For a split second, he looked like he was about to smile, the kind of faint, rare smile he only ever gave you. But before he could, you turned back to your computer. You didn't notice the way his expression subtly changed, or how he paused a moment before walking into his office. Miss Vine, his voice came through the intercom 10 minutes later. Can you bring me the merger files? Yes, sir. You answered immediately. You gathered the neatly prepared files and walked in, knocking once before stepping inside. He was sitting behind his desk, scrolling through his tablet. His gaze lifted the moment you entered. You look tired, he said quietly. You froze for half a second before managing a polite smile. Just a busy week, sir. He nodded. You have been having those a lot lately. You didn't respond. You simply placed the file on his desk and straightened up. The report is ready. I have also added the meeting notes from yesterday. Thank you, he said, leaning back slightly. You didn't have to come this early again. It's fine, I prefer starting early. You replied, tone steady, emotionless. Jungkook's brows furrowed slightly. Are you sure everything is okay? Yes, sir. The silence stretched between you, heavy, awkward, and new. Usually you would stay a little longer, asking if we needed anything, joking lightly about his back to back meetings or reminding him to eat lunch. But today you simply bowed and turned to leave. Just before you reached the door, his voice came again, quieter this time. Did I do something wrong? You froze mid step, your hand hovering near the door handle. No, sir, you said without turning around. You didn't. He exhaled softly. Then why do you sound like you are talking to a stranger? He forced a faint smile that he couldn't see. I just realized I should be a little more formal, that's all. When you finally left his office, Jungkook stayed still, eyes fixed on the door that had just closed behind you. Something was wrong, and he could feel it. The day passed with the same quiet tension. Your tone remained polite but distant. You didn't look up when he passed by. You didn't laugh at his rare jokes during meetings. You didn't even bring his coffee yourself. You simply asked the kitchen to do so. At first, he tried to brush it off, but as the hours turned into days, he started to notice it more and more. The way you avoided eye contact, the way you stepped back whenever he got too close, the way you smiled at everyone except him. By Friday, Jungkook couldn't take it anymore. When the last employee left the office that evening, he walked out of his cabin, loosening his tie slightly, his expression unreadable. You were still at your desk, typing the last few lines of a report. Wyan, you looked up immediately. Yes, sir. Come to my office. You hesitated. Now, sir? Yes, now. You followed him quietly, your heartbeat unsteady, unsure what he wanted. He waited until you stepped in and closed the door behind you before he spoke. I've been patient. Jungkook began, his voice calm but firm. But I need to know what's going on. You stayed silent, eyes fixed on the floor. You have changed. You don't talk. You don't smile. You barely look at me. Did I say something? Do something? You swallowed hard. No, sir, I just thought it's better to keep things professional. His jaw tightened. Professional? We have always been professional, so what's different now? You hesitated, your fingers gripping the edge of the file in your hand. Nothing, sir, I'm just adjusting. Adjusting to what? He pressed gently. You met his eyes then, for the first time all week, and you almost flinched to how calm and distant yours looked. To the fact that I won't be here for long. The room fell silent, his expression hardened slightly. What does that mean? You gave him a small, polite smile. It's okay, sir, you don't have to explain. I understand. And before he could say another word, you bowed lightly and walked out. He stood there frozen, staring at the closed door. Confusion, frustration, and something like panic flashing briefly in his eyes. That night he sat alone in his apartment, staring at the same velvet ring box again. You really think I'm planning to lose you? He muttered under his breath, voice low. You have no idea what I'm actually planning. The past few days had been painfully quiet. You had mastered the art of staying distant. Short replies, no eye contact, keeping everything strictly business. It was safer that way, at least that's what you told yourself. But Jungkook noticed every single time the way you avoided his gaze, the way you no longer smiled when he complimented your work, the way you never lingered in his office even for a second longer than necessary. He couldn't focus properly. Every meeting felt like a distraction from the question that haunted him. Why were you pushing him away? That Friday morning, the answer didn't come from you. It walked straight through the front doors of the company, in high heels and a designer coat. Yeji. You didn't need to be told who it was. You had seen her before, always close to him, always smiling, always throwing those subtle looks your way. And as if the universe wanted to make things harder, she walked right to your desk. Good morning, she said smoothly, flashing that practiced smile. You stood up politely. Good morning, Miss Yeji. Her eyes flicked over your outfit, neat as always. Cream blouse, pencil skirt, hair tied back. You looked exactly how a perfect secretary should, and somehow that only made her smile thinner. You look busy, she said, tone light but not warm. You nodded a little. Mr. John has a full day of meetings. Her lips curved faintly. Oh, I'm sure you keep him very organized. You always do. You blinked, unsure whether that was a compliment or not. I try my best. Hmm. She glanced toward Jungkook's office, then back at you. Well, he's lucky to have you. For now. You froze. Excuse me? She smiled again, that same sweet, poisonous kind. I mean, you have been around him for so long, right? 4 years. I would get attached too, if I were you. Before you could answer, Jungkook's voice came from behind her. Yeji. She turned, her expression softening instantly. Jungkook, I was just saying hi. His eyes flicked to you briefly before he gestured toward his office. Inside, we need to talk. You lowered your gaze. I'll bring the quarterly report in 5 minutes, sir. He nodded once but didn't miss how distant your tone sounded. Yeji followed him in, throwing one last sideways glance at you, half smug, half curious, before closing the door. The voices inside weren't loud, but you could still hear fragments. You said you had talked to her already, Yeji said sharply. Not like this, and I told you to stop showing up here unannounced. Why, afraid she'll see us together again? Yeji. His tone was warning now, cold, serious. You have crossed the line enough times. Don't test my patience. Your chest tightened as you stepped back. It wasn't your place to listen, but your heart refused to stop racing. Minutes later, the door opened again, this time with more force. Yeji stepped out first, his eyes hard but gleaming. He wants to see you, she said simply, brushing past you. You inhaled quietly before walking in. Jungkook stood by the window, one hand in his pocket, the other rubbing the back of his neck. He didn't turn immediately when you entered. Close the door, he said softly. You obeyed. The room fell into silence. He turned then, calm on the surface, but his eyes were restless. Sit, he said, nodding to the chair in front of him. You did, unsure what to expect. He leaned against the edge of his desk, arms crossed. You have been avoiding me. I haven't, sir. I've just been focused on work. His jaw tightened. You are such a terrible liar. You looked down. I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable. He exhaled sharply, pushing off the desk and walking a few steps closer. That's not what I meant, and you know it. You stayed quiet, then tell me, what did I do wrong? This time his voice was softer. You hesitated for a moment, then finally met his eyes. I overheard you, Jungkook. He froze the way you said his name, catching him off guard. You were on a call with Yechi last week. You continued, voice trembling slightly. You said, if she's uncomfortable with me, you'll replace me soon. His brows furrowed instantly. What? I wasn't trying to listen, you said quickly. I was passing by her office. I heard it and I understood everything I needed to. He stared at you, disbelief flickering across his face. You think I meant that? What else was I supposed to think? He let out a breathless laugh, not amused, just stunned. God, this is. He turned away for a moment, rubbing his temples, then looked back at you. You didn't hear the rest of that conversation, did you? You frowned, confused. What? I said that because she kept pushing. Jungkook said, his tone calm but full of frustration. She's been jealous of you for months, and I was trying to shut her up without explaining what I was really planning. You blinked, and what were you planning exactly? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked to his drawer, opened it slowly, and placed something small on the desk between you, a velvet box. Your heart stopped. I wasn't planning to replace you from this position. I was planning to propose to you. He stared at the box, frozen. What? Jungkook took a quiet step closer. His voice dropped to something gentler than you had ever heard from him. My parents have been pressuring me to get married. They even arranged meetings with other people, but I turned them all down because there's only one person I ever wanted to ask. You could barely breathe. You were saying, I'm saying it's you. He cut in, steady but sincere. It's always been you. Before you could reply, the door opened again. Yeji stood there, her arms folded, expression unreadable. I told you this would happen, she said flatly, looking at Jungle. She misunderstood. You should have been clear. He sighed, and I told you to stop interfering. Yeji's lips curved slightly, but there was no real smile this time. You think I didn't notice how you look at her? Everyone in this office does. You are not subtle, Jungkook. He didn't reply, just stared at her silently. She exhaled, shaking her head. Fine, I'll stop coming here. You win. As she turned to walk, she paused near you. You know how I used to think you were just another employee trying to impress him. Her voice softened, though her pride still lingered. But clearly, you are much more than that. She left without waiting for an answer. The door closed, leaving only the quiet hum of the air conditioner between you and him. You looked at Jungkook again, your voice barely above a whisper. Why didn't you tell me sooner? He smiled faintly, almost sadly, because I wanted to do it properly. I didn't want it to sound like just another decision. You deserve more than that. He took the ring box and opened it, revealing a delicate band that shimmered softly under the light. I know I scared you, and I'm sorry for every second you thought you were just replaceable. You're not. You never were. Your throat tightened. You really had to make me cry in the middle of the office, didn't you? He chuckled quietly. I'll make it up to you. How? He smiled then, calm, steady, and sincere, by asking again, this time properly. He knelt slightly, enough to make your eyes widen. Be mine, not as my secretary, as my woman. For a moment the world stood still. The office, the silence, the long ache in your chest. Everything faded. You let out a trembling laugh, your eyes glossy. You really are impossible. He smiled. Is that a yes? You nodded slowly, unable to hide the warmth in your voice. It's a yes, Jungkook. He stood up, the quietest relief flooding his expression as he slipped the ring onto your finger. And for the first time in a long while, you didn't feel like a secretary anymore. You felt like the person he had been waiting for all along.